Schmidt, it's the White House versus Congress in the battle over cybersecurity. Just 2 days ago, the House passed their version of the bill by a vote of 248 to 168, despite the president's vow to veto it. The fight now moves to the Senate, where two very different versions of the bill are vying for support. The Obama administration backs the bill sponsored by Senator Joe Lieberman. That legislation would require infrastructure companies like electric utilities to meet federal cybersecurity standards. Earlier today, U.S. Cybersecurity Coordinator and Special Assistant to the President Howard Schmidt spoke exclusively with me. I asked him why the president is so against this bill.
When the White House started the process to look at the things we need legislatively, there were some key principles that we built into it. One, first and foremost, privacy protection had to be built into any legislative action that took place. The second thing is, when we start looking at addressing the issue very broadly of cybersecurity, there's got to be a component that helps incentivize the core critical infrastructure, not everything in critical infrastructure, but those things we really depend on a day-to-day basis for our society. We have to do something to make sure those are a part of it. And the third thing, when we start looking at interactions between companies, and those are sort of the very broad liability pieces that we are concerned about, to make sure companies indeed to do the things that are currently under law, things such as antitrust, things that Electronic Communications Privacy Act, to make sure that they continue to do the things that are currently in law, but only to have some freedom of safe harbors from areas that narrowly crafted to cybersecurity. We didn't see that, and that's why we were concerned.
Right, and the White House has said that companies have too much power under this particular bill. Given your former role as the chief security officer at Microsoft, you also worked at eBay. How do you reconcile how much power companies should have?
Well, there's a couple things, and to be very clear, that most companies do the right thing when it comes to not only corporate operations, but also specifically when it comes to cybersecurity. But that we've shown in history that not everybody does that all the time. So when we start looking at the role of the companies have in the ability to affect our day-to-day lives and critical infrastructure, those are the things we're concerned to make sure that somebody doesn't go down the wrong path that would affect our country negatively.
Now, the White House has drafted its own legislation. What sort of compromise are you looking for? What kind of legislation do you want?
Well, the language that we put forth about a year ago this month, as a matter of fact, was about 9 months of working not only with the departments and agencies across the government, but also working through the departments and agencies with private sector to see what are the things that we need the legislative branch to help us on. So that proposal we put forth a year ago pretty well covers those things. Enhancements for criminal penalties, the ability to have the Department of Homeland Security, the civilian agency, help better secure the civilian side of government, and changes to FISMA that we see necessary. Information sharing, a very important piece of it, is also our proposal. But last part of the proposal were the things where it looks into the ability for the government to have a better sense of security, and knowing that the companies under the most severe cybersecurity issues will still be able to deliver the goods and services that we expect them as citizens. That's what we've supported, that's what we put forward, and that's what we're hoping the legislative branch will bring us.
Now, everyone seems to agree cybersecurity is a hugely important issue, one that needs to be acted upon very soon. The question is, while Congress is debating what kind of legislation is better than other legislation, are we protected enough in the meantime?
Well, and I think you bring up a really good point, because when we start looking about anyone we've talked to up on the Hill, and for a long time this has been a bipartisan, bicameral issue, recognizing there's things that the government will need to do and should be doing. In the meantime, we have not sat as the executive branch just waiting for Congress to do something. We continue to exercise the powers, bringing together the investigative organizations across the government, working with state and local law enforcement, making sure we have the Department of Homeland Security in their role, not only working with private sector, but also information sharing, making sure that we're leveraging the capabilities that DOD and the intelligence community has. We continue to work those in the background. So while there's things we need legislatively, that doesn't mean things have stopped waiting for Congress to do something specifically.
Given the rise in cyber attacks around the world, targeting companies, targeting governments, do you think that we should be scared?
Boy, that's really tough, because I don't know that I use the term be scared. We have to be very, very cognizant of the risks that are out there to make sure that we as citizens on our day-to-day basis understand what the risks are, so we can conduct our normal day-to-day transactions on the internet, which tremendously benefit e-commerce. We also make sure that governments and their responsibilities that they have that are coordinating with each other to make sure that we're identifying cyber criminals, we're identifying thefts, instances where there's theft of intellectual property, so working together. So I don't know that I would call it being scared. We need to be cognizant and take proactive actions to better protect ourselves.
That was White House Cybersecurity Chief Howard Schmidt in our exclusive interview earlier today.